So now that we've seen how a basic list view works, we've run into a new issue. This is just a list of strings. It's not very exciting. It definitely moves up and down and serves a functional purpose, but we're not going to win any design awards for an app that just shows some strings. We want these particular cells to be something that we have control over. We want to be able to design these ourselves in Vue XML and have them look, well, pretty. So, that's what a custom adapter is going to do for us. In order to make that happen, we're going to need to do a couple things. One, we're going to need some row XML that's engaging in some way. So as you can see here, we have an image view, text that's changed size and color, and all of this is in a relative layout. The height I've set to wrap content, which means that even though we can just see white go all the way down to the bottom here, it actually will be cut off here when it's rendered, right? So we want to take this little template of a row, and we want to apply it instead of using just a simple set of strings and the default Android simple list item layout. So how is that different from what we did before? Well, for one, we're going to need a data class. Here we have place, and that's going to store all the information that we might need for each of those particular rows. Our list view activity, instead of using this set of data, which was just an array of strings, is now going to use this set of data, which is an array of places. This is just a sample set of data so that we could get this up and running. As you can see on the onCreate method, it's pretty much the exact same thing as we had for a basic list view, right? We have a list view and finding the view by the ID set of code here. We are using a set adapter method call in order to set it. The only difference is that rather than having an array adapter, we're using a place adapter. Place adapter has the same constructor that we had for an array adapter. It takes a context, and then after that it takes some row XML. In this case, we're actually referencing ours, not the Android generated one. And then we have the set of data that we want to use. Rather than it being an array of strings, it's going to be an array of place objects, allowing us a lot more flexibility. Go over here to our place adapter. We can see the constructor that we are using in that method call in our activity. Our place adapter itself extends array adapter, only it's going to be for specifically place objects. So our constructor is basically just passing control onto the super. It's almost like it wasn't there, except for we're saving all those particular parameters as they come in. The context, the row XML as a resource ID, and then the data itself. The heart of this whole custom adapter thing is this method right here, getView. The getView method is what the list view is actually going to call every time it needs a new cell. So, if there's a position 0, for instance, in here, it would be our art house would be at position 0. It's going to request a get view and pass in the position on the screen. So 0, 1, 2, etc. So all we need to do is return, according to its return type, a view that is what we actually want to display. Now, if we wanted to, we could just return the same view over and over again, and we'd see it happen for as many rows as there are data. But we actually want to take that template of row XML and take the data that we were using and combine it. That's why we saved a reference to the data up here and a reference to the row XML up here. So what I did is I first just renamed convertView row, because it's a lot easier for me to think about the row XML as being row rather than the word convertView. Here we're getting an object called inflator, which is a layout inflator object. It can be gathered from context, and it's what we're going to use to actually turn the XML into an actual view by calling inflate on it. After we get that particular row inflated, well, now we need to actually find the individual elements on the row that we want to change for each time that the data is different. So here we're using a find view by ID, but we're not doing it just out in the middle of nowhere. We're actually calling that method on the row view itself. This is a lot different than when we were actually manipulating stuff in activities, where we didn't actually need to specify what object findViewById was being called on. So we get our name view and our zip view and our image view. And that corresponds to our name view, which is here, our zip view, which is here, and our image view right here. So once we actually have a reference to each of the pieces on a particular row, we just get a place object from the data that we saved earlier using the position parameter that was passed in earlier. So again, this place object will reflect art house, bike shop, or camera fix, depending on what position is getting passed into the view and being asked for. After that, well, we have what we want to change, and we have what we want to change it to, and that's what these particular lines of code are doing here. We're just taking the place object, name of place, setting the text to be reflected on the view. We're doing the same thing for zip view, only we're being very careful to make sure that zip code, which is actually an int, is converted to a string. Otherwise we'll get errors. And then we're setting the image. For the image, we have to jump through some more hoops. We have to actually first get the actual image as a int, and then we can use this method called setImageResource. Now, if we were going to YouTube or Twitter, we would probably have some cached data and be manipulating the bitmap directly. But for this example, we actually have an image for each of these items already in the drawables directory. So here we're just saying, hey, context, get resources, get identifier, and we have three pieces to grab an image. And this is the same way that you'd grab an image if you wanted to hard code it any place in your app. So we have the name of the image, which if you saw our data beforehand, is just the name of the actual file, but not the extension. So here we have art, and that corresponds to art, but we don't have the PNG. So we have the name of the image, we reference it in the drawable folder, and then we also need to provide our package name, which you can also get from mcontext. It's a really good thing we saved that guy. He's been pretty useful so far. So last we have our image view. We set the image resource to be that particular number, and bam, we're connecting this picture, and this picture, and this picture, depending on whether or not we're looking at art house, bike shop, or camera fix. Now after we've done all of this, we actually have to finally return the row. I mean, after all, that was the point of the getView method in the first place. When this runs, rather than seeing a bland array of strings that we can scroll up and down on, we should see something much more fully graphical. And sure enough, that same row XML is now being used to display in a list the data that we had in our activity. If we click on these, it's the same thing. That listener that we had set up in our list view activity for a basic list view is going to, I'm going to expand this out, is going to do the exact same thing, right? We're going to get a listener event whenever that happens, only rather than referencing the array and the element, I'm actually referencing the array and the element and then the actual value field that I want to reference.